Good evening, millennials. Today we'll look at an lead code hard problem rarely asked in FAANG interview companies, but it's often tested in other companies such as Visa. So let's look at the question. This is the 1675th question in the lead code website called minimize deviation in array, and it's a hard problem. So let's read the question. You are given an array nums of n positive integers. You can perform two types of operations on any elements of the array any number of times. If the element is even, divided by 2. For example, if the array is 1, 2, 3, 4, then you can do this operation on the last element. And the array will be 1, 2, 3, 2. Here we have just decreased the last element. And if the element is odd, multiply it by 2. For example, if the array is 1, 2, 3, 4, then you can do the operation on the first element. And the array will be 2, 2, 3, and 4. The deviation of the array is the maximum difference between any two elements in the array. So, the deviation is the maximum difference between any two elements. So, we need to return the minimum deviation that the array can have after performing any number of operations. So, let's look at the example. So, the numbers is 1, 2, 3, 4 and the output is 1, because if we just transform the array to 1, 2, 3 and 2, then the first element to again multiply it by 2, then the deviation will be 3 minus 2. As you can see, you can't achieve a greater deviation than this. Similarly, for the second case, 4, 1, 5, 20 and 3, we can transform the array by multiplying the second one into 2 and dividing the fourth element by 2 times. Since 20 by 2 is 10 is even and 10 by 2 5 is odd. After that you can't do anything, and when you multiply again it will become 10, and the minimum deviation in this case would be 5 minus 2, and you can't achieve a lesser deviation than 3. Similarly, for 2, 10 and 8, you can divide 10 by 2, which is 5, and 5 minus 2 will be 3, or 8 minus 5 will be 3, and that is the least deviation you can get. So let's look at the constraints. So n is nums dot length, and the array's length lies between 2 and 10 power 5. So we know that there's a minimum of 2 elements and there's a maximum of 10 power 5 elements. So you can't run an n square algorithm. So, and nums of I value lies between 1 and 10 power 9. So let's try to derive the formula from this. So as you can see, the odd numbers, if you multiply it by 2, it becomes an even number. So the maximum an odd number can get is between that. There are only two states for an odd number, its value and it multiplied by 2. However, if it's even, you can keep on dividing it till you get to an odd number from where its branch started. So if it's something, say 2 power n, you can keep on dividing until it's 1. So in that case, in this case, you can see that the answer at last would be the maximum odd number left after transforming minus the minimum even number, because the deviation will be the maximum minus minimum element. So, but you need to. So this is the case when when the maximum element is odd. But when the maximum element is even, you need to check for all numbers its difference between the maximum and the other elements. So to do this simply, you can make everything as even, since odd means you need to multiply, then keep a variable called current minimum to check for the minimum up till that point. Then find the answer as the maximum element minus the minimum element up till that point. So since you need to get the maximum, you can't loop again and again to get a maximum element. Since you have to use an order of n algorithm, you have to use a max heap, because in max heap you can get a maximum in order of 1. So let's try to write the solution. So let my answer variable be int max, and I will return the minimum deviation. So I'm initializing it to int max. Similarly, current minimum, I need to find the current minimum in each iteration. So I will initialize it to int max, and at last I will return answer. So except for this one case, you need to build a priority queue which works on the basis of heap. So if you don't understand what a max heap is, please feel free to look at our other videos, but till then I will try to build the shortest code possible. So to get a heap, I'm using the C++ STL priority queue, and it's type integer. So in this priority queue, first I will populate it with the numbers. So for auto num colon nums, if number is odd, that means, so let me name another variable as int current element. If number is odd, I can just multiply it by 2, because this is the only 2 states for an odd number. So since we want to find the minimum deviation, we are changing everything to even. If it's not odd, then it's just the number itself. And then I just push it into the priority queue to build a max heap. I just push the current element, and then I try to keep the value of the minimum element till this point. So minimum of current min and the current element. Now we have to process the heap until we get the maximum as an odd number. So till the maximum is an odd number, we just divide the maximum element possible and again push it into the queue and heapify it again. So while pq.top, so while the priority queue top is still even, what do? I check my answer as answer, comma, the top element minus the current minimum. So I just try to get the minimum deviation possible, but this element can still produce a greater element in the queue, because the least other elements is 4, 5, 1 and 3, and even if 20 is divided by 2, it still creates a greater even number. So we just push into the queue. So after getting that, we push into the queue the element by 2. It's okay if it's even or odd, because once the largest element becomes the odd number, this while loop stops. And we need to update our current minimum, which will be minimum of the current minimum, comma, the new element that we have pushed into the queue. And after that, we have to pop this element out because we have processed it. And at last, our answer will have the minimum element. But this has only been processed for all the greatest even numbers. But assume we have processed all even numbers. So after the last element, after this loop ends, the top element would be an odd number. So we have to calculate that. So the answer will be minimum of answer, comma, pq.top in this case. So where the greatest element after the change is 5, and we have to reduce the minimum element. I think that should run it, but let's just dry run the code. So initially we initialize it as in max, then we have priority queue, then we iterate the nums. Then if the number is odd, num and 1 means it's odd, we multiply it by 2, because odd we can multiply it by 2, else the number, and we push the current element, and the current minimum will be the minimum of the current minimum and the current element. And while we have the greatest as a even number, we find the minimum possible answer, which is the top minus the current minimum, and then we again push it that divided by 2, then we again find the current minimum, we update it by current minimum as that top by 2, and then we pop the element. And at last, that one special case where the top element is odd, and if that is less than the even validation, then we need to check for it. So that will be pq.top minus the current minimum. So let me just run the code. Yeah, I've just ran it a few times to check for sanity errors, and as you can see, it passes, and it's better than 60% of the solutions. This is slow because we are using an inbuilt STL, but this can be made faster by using a array based priority queue. Thank you. If you can find a better solution this, or a shorter and a faster solution this, please leave it down in the comments below, and we will try to update our answer, as we always welcome constructive feedback. If you can support us, please hit the like button or comment and subscribe. Thank you.